Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Parimal Puranik. I'm Senior Director of Product Management for SteelFusion. A few of my colleagues have already gone in and introduced some of the concepts around what we're doing with the cloud. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you are familiar with SteelFusion? I did a quick presentation at Tech Field Day. I know, Kevin, you were there, but probably not a lot of people. So what I'll do is I'll just do a really quick overview in terms of what SteelFusion does in the overall landscape. And then we'll talk very quickly, we'll transition very quickly into what we are doing for SteelFusion as an on-premises solution, how we are going in and translating that into more of the world as well. So very quickly, SteelFusion is you can think about it as an application platform that is intended to run applications that are specific to the edge of the enterprise. Think about it as branch offices, remote offices, and so on. So whereas you would typically go and essentially have a replica of a data center in your branch office, where you basically add server storage and backup to that, to the branch office, what we essentially do is put it on a single appliance. We'll just call that the SteelFusion Edge. And that SteelFusion Edge connects over the WAN into an on-premise data center, where we'll connect it with a SteelFusion Core and then connect it to enterprise storage. Now, this all just looks like a very simple sort of an architecture that potentially that you can go and say, okay, all that when applications are running on this platform, the writes basically get written to the edge, and then they go and get transmitted across the WAN and then come back to the data center. So sounds like a simple asynchronous sort of an asynchronous replication architecture. That's probably a very simplistic way of describing it. What we do with this is actually layer in, bring in quite a few optimizations to be able to go and run in the branch or edge sort of workplace. Number one, this, instead of running a full copy of data, what we really have is a caching architecture at the edge. So essentially, you don't need to have a full one-to-one copy of data in the branch versus in the data center. What we also do is we introduce some application-specific semantics and file system smarts that allow us to basically guess what data is being read or requested by the applications. So you're not just caching. So when you do request a particular piece of data, we build in some intelligence to be able to guess what could be accessed next and pull in that piece of data. Where that really comes into play is a functionality that we call boot over WAN. So what customers of us are able to go and do is essentially go in and go and say that take some pre-existing VMware data stores that you have running in your data center, basically associate them with an edge device in a remote location, and without 100% of the data being transmitted across the wire, we are able to bring up virtual machines in a matter of minutes over low bandwidth, high latency links. So
using Pixie?
It's actually not using Pixie at all. It would just, from a perspective of an application, it's just looking as if it's pulling up data locally. But in reality, what we do is we understand NTFS and VMFS, and what we do is we basically proactively pull in segments of data that map to those boot segments.
DHCP options or something?
No, it's actually over a proprietary protocol that we built out.
Okay.
But think about it as I'm sorry.
So you're creating a VM
it's
on the edge, and then you're streaming the
it's on, yes, it is
essentially.
Yes, it is essentially a streaming sort of an
so you're not like
paradigm.
booting and building a laptop.
But
This is not this is based off an existing set of VM images that you can go boot.
So this
only
is
VM, not like hardware PCs or.
No, this is essentially this is
Okay, it's all in software.
This is over installed VM images.
So this is for a branch office.
Yes, absolutely.
What's the cloud edge thing? Are we-
Yeah.
Yeah, we just,
That was-
yeah. So we'll just get into that. So
I'm just trying to figure out how it applies to cloud.
no, absolutely. So in a nutshell, what we are looking to go do is find a way by which as customers are moving away from an on-premises data center and moving into more of a cloud world, we are able to go in and be able to go and leverage the economies of scale for what you can do with the cloud instead of using a data center. That's in a nutshell, and we'll get into a little bit of detail as to how we are doing it. But think about it as, rather than using enterprise storage in your data centers, you could be using cloud-based storage. Now, cloud-based storage obviously, brings about using cloud storage brings about its own set of challenges, and there's some interesting ways in which we are going to address that. Does that kind of give you an overall idea? And then we can definitely.
We'll see where you go with it.
Absolutely. Okay. So I just want to make a couple of points over here, and then we'll just move on. What we do, because of the architecture that we do have here, we are able to reduce the footprint of data that's available on edge locations. So think about this as, many of the three-letter agencies are customers of ours. So we essentially minimize the footprint of data that's available in the remote site, and essentially have full copies of data only back in a secure location. So it's fully secure from that perspective. And what we are also able to go and do is essentially provide a very high level of business continuity, where customers of ours are essentially able to go and have enterprise-grade SLAs, even for their edge locations. Yeah. So
If you're caching at the edge, and all my data or my applications are over HTTPS,
yep.
how can you save any bandwidth if?
Yeah, that's a good.
Can you decrypt them though?
Yeah, that's a great question. Essentially, what we are doing is, this is a combination of a couple of different Riverbed technologies working together. The first is the caching-based architecture, that's SteelFusion. We also supplement it with the overall WAN optimization that you get from SteelHead. So the way to think about it is, you have different classes of applications. Think about it from a cloud or SaaS-based applications that and these could be running over HTTP, HTTPS, or you have these could be accessed over HTTP, HTTPS, or you have other applications that are running in your data center, and then specific applications that you run locally on your edge site. So we built for the edge local applications, but from a form factor perspective, we also include the WAN optimization or SteelHead functionality. So that does provide you optimized access for all three classes of applications.
But you've got to intercept and decrypt the TLS.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We do that. By we, I use the Riverbed we in this perspective, but that's the SteelHead.
The customer would do that. Your three-letter agency would do that.
Yes, we do provide key management and so on, so you can go in and do that. And
thank you.
If we have more details, probably Javier can go into much more detail after sessions in terms of how we manage some of those aspects. So just very quickly, I was mentioning a little bit about the boot over WAN functionality. What we've managed to do with this is essentially simplify the process of deploying applications at these edge locations to a matter of a few clicks. Now, I know that this is almost like, we're talking at Cloud Field Day, and there's almost an inherent paradigm that everything is simple and easy to deploy. And that's the sort of model that we've tried to go and build with, even as we introduced the product almost 5 years ago. So I'll just start getting very quickly to some of the content in terms of the cloud. But as I said earlier, we were working mostly with enterprise storage vendors. A couple of years ago, we introduced an option where it's similar to using enterprise storage vendors. You could also use cloud gateway products, be it StoreSimple or Amazon Storage Gateway, and essentially use that as a proxy to go directly into the cloud. This deployment model has actually been quite successful, and we've got many customers that are running, many tens of terabytes of data up in Azure and AWS. We've also have a strategic partnership with IBM. You can go and run this in IBM Bluemix as well. But really what we are looking to go do is to try and start attaching to some of the well-known clouds like Azure and AWS. So Azure is the first one that we've picked from that perspective. And what you'll see is, this is a very similar diagram to what we saw earlier, where essentially instead of having any data center, you do go directly into Azure. Just from a simplicity perspective, what I've done is I've not added in components like the Steel Connect solution or the Cloud SteelEdge solution. So just kept it as the SteelFusion Core itself, but that's the overall part of the solution as well. What we're essentially able to go and do with this solution is be able to go take data that is running at the that would be able to run in edge locations and bring that securely back into an Azure-based cloud. The second part about this that's interesting is, as customers are looking to go into the cloud, particularly with their edge applications, they're probably not the tier 1 applications that they're looking to deploy, but they are revenue generating and important. So you are able to go in and continue using the same apps that you have without requiring a lot of rewrite to go and use those applications. We do provide that level of central management where we are able to go in and provision complete storage and applications centrally as well, and also go and talk about and also provide a level of great data protection. Data security is kind of built into the overall solution. This would go into your VPC or your VNets in the cloud itself. But even beyond that, you would use the best of breed cloud networking solutions that we are using and things that Vivek just described as well. So with this, the overall model for us is to try and simplify the process of getting storage, storage or applications from your central location to the edge of the location. So these are some actual screenshots from the solution that we are currently in development with. But what we've done, what you're able to go do is literally in a matter of 2 clicks, essentially pick up, create a specific amount of storage in Azure and be able to go and make that available across distance, across a ton of distance. You will not have any degradation in performance because you essentially have the model where you have the caching architecture and your applications don't end up seeing the latency going to the cloud. Okay. Just going back a little further, you're also able to go in and what I did mention is we build in a level of data protection, and that data protection really can come about through snapshots, and what we can go and do is essentially create complete recovery points, and those recovery points are available in the cloud, and you're easily able to go pick those recovery points and be able to recover back to the data center, back to your edge locations in a matter of clicks. So a lot of value there so that you don't need to go in and remember if the admin in your remote office, branch office did remember to replace tapes and so on. So a lot of simplicity in that solution. But just going forward, and I wish we got to spend a lot more time on that, but a couple of things, a few different things are happening with SteelFusion this year. We are about a month away from going and starting up for a beta program to go in and move from just a VMware-centric world into having a Hyper-V offering as well. So essentially, the same bits of functionality that we've come to expect with VMware, we'll be able to go deliver that with Hyper-V as well. And as I mentioned, we'll be doing, we're doing the cloud offering that's going to come out sometime later in the year as well. And the great thing about this is this architecture lends itself even to AWS. That'll be next on the docket as well. It's not just that you have to use our appliances, you can do this on third-party hardware as well. But the architecture that we've developed is something that can go in and be relevant, even not just from a VMware perspective, but as applications go and move into containers, and some of the use cases might change, not from line of business applications, we'll be able to go and have a solution for that. So we've done some experiments with going and creating Docker volume plugins and being able to have even Docker applications supported on that. So we've had a slightly abbreviated time here, but we can definitely go in and have a deep dive. I just want to finish with a thought that there's a typical paradigm of how you have there's almost like a pendulum where you're trying to move from a client server based model and then back to a centralized model. There's always this toggle. We think that there's a solution by which we can have a balance between each of those perspectives, and SteelFusion helps you achieve that, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's an on-premises data center. So.